This video is going to begin the topic of SQL. It's just an introductory topic to be used in this course. SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and most organizations refer to it as SQL or SQL. Now, when you're working in a database, almost everything action you do is actually creating SQL programming. Whether you're creating a query, whether you're inputting data into a table, behind the scenes, Access is creating the structured query language programming. So we're going to take a look at some of the common features of this. First of all, we're going to just understand the first four basic clauses. The first clause is select, and what you're doing in a select clause is selecting the fields you want to appear in your SQL. Then you have to have the from. So and from means what table the fields are going to be displayed from. You can add a where clause, which is the same thing as creating conditions or criteria. And the last clause that we're going to talk about right now is order by, which is just whether you want to sort in ascending or descending order by which field. Now, when you're using SQL, when you're finished, notice that the select and the from table are required, and you must end it with a semicolon. So if you don't have a where or an order by, you have to remember to type the semicolon at the end. So let's take a look at select. It's the very first clause that needs to be displayed, and then you list the fields that you want that follow it. It is required, it must appear first, and here are some of the rules. So you have to include at least one field. If you're going to do more than one field, separate them with commas. If you want to do all the fields from a particular table, use the wildcard star or asterisk, and it will include them all. If your field names have two spaces, like date hired or last name and there's a space, make sure your field is included in the brackets. Now that's not the curly braces, those are the square brackets. You can use what are called qualified names. So I can say, okay, from table 1 I want to include this field, comma. Then from table 2 I want to include another field. And you separate them with a period, the table name and the field. So this is useful, qualified names are useful when you have the same field name in different tables. For example, down here I have, if I wanted to see the last name of my doctor along with the last name of patient, this is how you would type it in the select clause. So some examples of select, if I just type select, first name, comma, last name, comma, date hired, and notice in date hired I put brackets because it's two words, that would display those three fields. The select star displays all the fields, and here I have select last name from the doctor table and last name from the patient table. Okay, that's select. Now, from is also required. This is where you list the tables. It follows the select clause. You have to include at least one table. If you have more than one table, you separate them with commas. If you have multiple tables and there's no relationship form, then you have to specify the join type and include an on statement. Most of the time they're inner joins. Occasionally you could have an outer join. And what the inner join is going to do is return the records that match both values in a table. Again, if the from is the last clause, you have to end it with a semicolon. Some examples of from. I have from Hack Students. That's from the Hack Students table. Now notice I have it in brackets because it's two words. Or I can say from doctors, comma, patients. That's pulling fields from two different tables, the doctor's tables and the patient's table. And here's an example of how you would create an inner join on agent's employee num, which equals from the listings table, listing agent num. So the listing agent num and employee num have an inner join between those two tables. All right, let's take a look at some real examples here. I'm going to come back and I have an Access database file opened up. So to create a query in SQL, all I'm going to do is create query design. I'm going to close my table, and I'm going to come down here the bottom right hand corner and go SQL view. Okay, notice select automatically comes up along with the the semicolon. So let's say I want to display first name, comma, last name, comma, date hired. And I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to say from agents. Okay, I have my select, my from, they're both required. I have my semicolon at the end. When I click to run the query, it shows me my first name, my last name, and the date hired for this query. Okay, I'm going to click my design view button, and I'm going to go back to SQL view. Now, let's say I don't want to do each name. I want to look at all the fields from agents. So instead of typing them out separately, I'm just going to go select star, and then again from agents, I'm going to click run, and it has listed all my fields from the agents. I'm just going to click save, and I'm going to call this show all agents, and it becomes a query then. Okay, I'm going to close this, and I'm going to create a different one. I'm going to go create query design, close, change to SQL view. This time I want to pull information from two different tables. So I'm going to come up here to select, and I'm going to say I want from my agents period table, I want to pull up I want to display the last name. Then from my sold properties table, I want to show the listing ID. And the last field I want to do from my sold properties table is show the sold price. I have to include the from, and this time I have to list agents, comma, sold properties. Those are the two tables that I'm pulling the information out. Again, I finish off my query with the semicolon. If I click run, whoops, didn't like that. Let me see, I don't have something spelled right correctly. Agents, last name, sold properties, listing ID. I don't have a period here. Oops. Sold price. Oh, here's my agents. It's not spelled correctly. TS. Okay, so this is programming, so you really have to watch how you're spelling. Now if I click run, I have my listings, and here's the person's last name, here's the ID, and here's the price that they sold. Okay? All right. So let's just save this as show sold properties. Okay, so that's using the select and from. I'll continue with another video to explain more of the SQL clauses.